I just saw the Wicked movie.
And?
I loved
Are you holding space?
I'm holding. I know by the time this comes out, it's going to be weeks from now. Everyone will have seen it. But I took Daisy and Steve on Sunday. I cried through the whole thing.
Great.
It's like, is Ariana Grande the greatest actress of our time? We don't know yet. The jury's out.
That's all I know.
So, she's so good.
I'm waiting to see it. It's Ashley and I are going. Don't you worry. We'll recap.
Okay. Hi, Julian Benzavali.
Hi, Patrick Hines.
Fam, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
If you are on the Patreon or if you care to join the Patreon, our next drag bingo is next Wednesday, December 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Perfect.
It's our Christmas bingo.
Yeah, it's great. Again, you can participate as much or as little as you like.
Yeah.
You can have your camera on, off, whatever.
You know what
the chat is always on fire.
The chat really, you got to stay on top of that chat because it's like really is on fire. Every month we do it, more and more people show up.
It's really fun.
It really is like the fun. Come and hang out. No pressure. It's so much fun.
It's so much fun.
It's the best. Girl, what are we talking about today?
So this is our last bonus episode of the year. I can't believe we're here. This is that show, Web of Death, which we like. It's very victim focused. This is episode 4 of Web of Death. It's called California Dreaming.
When you make a promise to the old people, you don't break that promise. You have to live that promise. Find her, bring her home. Those were my grandmother's instructions. Many have been lost. Many have been murdered. It's still happening.
She'd been stabbed more than 28 times. She had no ID with her, no indication of who she was, where she came from.
There's someone's sister, possibly someone's wife, and there's got to be people out there that knew them.
There really wasn't anyone that called to inquire about her. The case grew cold.
You cannot dispute DNA evidence. You just can't.
I've been looking for 40 years. You don't give up. You can't stop. We couldn't imagine, what happened? Where'd you go?
I love Web of Death because we get to see Bobby Ruff in the opening credits every time.
And he's the thumbnail of his episode, which is kind of like, isn't it the Ed 8 of the show? But
you know what?
No shade to Bob. We love everything that they're doing over there at Truth and Justice.
When you got a face like Bob Ruff, be the thumbnail. Just be the thumbnail you want to see in the world.
You know what? Yes.
You know what I mean? So we start with Steve Rose. He's a cold case detective at the Ventura County District Attorney's Office. This guy, we'll get more into it later. He is 100% in this job for the victims.
He's an evidence guy, too.
Yes, he's an evidence guy.
And those two things go hand in hand. Going for the victims and the evidence, like he gets very excited about solving shit.
Yes. Well, we'll learn too that like he was a detective for forever. He retired for one day. They're like, Steve, you want to come back and do cold cases? And he's like, yes, I do.
So let's go back to July 15th, 1980.
Yeah.
We're at an almond orchard off Highway 99.
Yeah.
And the cops, remember, it's 1980, and the cops find a body.
There they encountered a female, fully clothed, lying in the orchard. She had no ID with her, no indication of who she was, where she came from. Lying near her on the ground was a beer bottle and a pack of cigarettes, some tire tracks, and that was the extent of the evidence other than what was confined to her body.
The evidence is pretty limited as well.
Yeah, they found a beer bottle near her on the ground. They found a pack of cigarettes and some tire tracks. Now, if this were, say, the 2000s, we would know about DNA. We'd be able to collect a lot of DNA evidence, but this is the 80s. They'd never even heard of DNA. So, like, really all they have are those three things: the beer bottle, pack of cigarettes, and some tire tracks.
So this woman is referred to as Jane Doe, Kern County, number 5.
They do an autopsy, and they see she was stabbed more than 28 times. She had a blood alcohol level of 0.3. The legal limit is 0.08.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it is. She was very, very, very intoxicated. And they say that she was sexually assaulted, obviously, against her will.
Her sneakers were pristine white, so there's no blood on the tops of her sneakers. And Detective Steve, who's here now, he wasn't there initially in 1980, but he says based on this evidence, what he can tell looking at it all those years later is that she was stabbed lying down.
Yeah.
She was killed elsewhere, brought to this location, and left there.
Like, it seems like she was passed out somewhere or something.
Yeah.
and that she was stabbed while she was unconscious, and then she was brought to this orchard and like dumped.
Yeah. So we meet Dawn Ratliff. She is amazing.
Can we talk about her for 1 second? Because she is me in this moment.
I love her.
I love her too. They make everybody in these documentaries do that thing where it's like, Dawn, just can you walk down the hallway towards us, girl? And we're just going to... She
like,
looks
here's a
so...
folder. She's like, is there anything in it? Like, don't you know how valuable my folders are? I'm
and
freaking
how
Dawn.
valuable her fucking time is. She doesn't have time for this. She looks so uncomfortable doing this, like, walk down the hallway. I felt very
Dawn.
seen in this moment.
I love her.
But she tells us that the cause of death was the multiple stab wounds. She says there were a lot of defensive wounds. But now the most important thing...
Once cause and manner of death is established, one of the very first priorities is for us to complete an identification and then to find family members and notify them about the death. We fingerprinted, and there were no prints on file.
They do her fingerprints, but there's no fingerprints on file. And Dawn says she seems like somebody that somebody would miss. So they're expecting people to call looking for her, but nobody does.
Because Dawn needs to identify this woman so she can notify her family. And they can't do that. No one was calling to ask about this woman. No one filed a report. And so Dawn says, and so she remained Jane Doe, Kern County, number 5.
Like, what's that 1 through 4? Are we going to learn about them?
I know.
You know what I mean?
It's so awful. And I'm repeating that it's Jane Doe, Kern County, number 5 for a reason, because we will get back to it. But that is how she is known.
Girl, Miracle Made is back. These are these like self-cleaning, self-cooling sheets. Last night, we threw the thick blanket on the bed for the first time.
It's the best.
And we were able to do it because we had like the self-cooling sheets. We didn't even have to have the window open. It was genius.
Yeah, the thing about your temperature is that it actually is really important. It's not just something we like to complain about. Yeah. Because if you're waking up in the middle of the night because you're too hot or you're too cold, that is affecting your sleep quality.
Yeah. Well, so listen, we talk about the temperature, but we also going to talk about how like you can get the sheet stink. You ever gotten the sheet stink? Not with Miracle Made.
Not with Miracle Made. Hell no.
No, these sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets.
Yeah, and they're designed for your skin. So stop, all of you, stop sleeping on bacteria.
Yes.
Bacteria, as we know, can clog your pores. It causes breakouts. It causes acne. We don't want that. We're sleeping clean with Miracle.
Look, just one more thing about the temperature regulating properties. These Miracle Made sheets use silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA.
Come on.
Like, these are literal, like, geniuses making this thing. I know. They're so good. We love them. We're totally obsessed. So, fam, you're going to try them too. Go to trymiracle.com/TCO to try Miracle Made sheets today.
And whether you're buying for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%.
And if you use our promo code TCO at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%.
Yeah, Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund.
Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/TCO and use the code TCO to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off.
Again, that's trymiracle.com/TCO to treat yourself.
Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
And for my sleep quality upgrade.
I know.
Loving it.
Everybody in these episodes really cares about identifying these bodies and sending them back to their families for proper burials. It really occurred to me in watching this how many unidentified bodies there must be out there and how fucking sad that is.
Yeah, and in this story specifically, because now we're going to Alberta, Canada, roughly 2,000 miles away, and we're in a town called Musquecheese, and it is a First Nation community, and it's home to the Samson Cree Nation.
Yeah, and so we meet a woman named Violet. Now, she says her Cree name, but even in the episode, the closed captions didn't give it to us.
It says speaks indistinctly, which I took great offense to.
Yes.
So, Tom, can we please hear Violet say her Cree name?
Yeah.
My name is Violet Soosay. That's my English name. My Cree name is Bisimwak Squill. Family is very important in our community, in any Indigenous community. Looking out for each other and checking in on each other. And I've been looking for my aunt since I was in my early 20s.
She's been looking for her aunt since her aunt went missing when Violet was in her early 20s.
So her aunt's English name is Shirley, and Shirley was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
She was lighthearted, she was gentle, and Violet had like really long hair. She still does. And Violet tells a story where she says that her hair was really long and like could kind of get unruly, and she only trusted Shirley to brush her hair.
Anybody who's got a young girl in their life knows that, like, I'm the one that Daisy will let brush her hair. She will not let Daddy Steve brush it. Or also, she will let any woman brush it. And she will choose a woman over me, even if that woman woman has never brushed her hair before, ever.
Yeah, she gets it.
Yeah,
we know.
totally.
But Violet says that Shirley always made her feel special.
Yes.
And she really, really tells us about this. They had an incredibly strong connection. Violet says, I really, really love Shirley. It's like you can tell they were very, very close. And they were in the middle of this close-knit family. The two of them really found each other.
Yeah, there's this one picture of Shirley that we see a lot where she just looks so interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
And she was, because Violet tells us in the early 70s, in the community where they were living, there was a lot of poverty.
Yes.
And Violet says most people were venturing off reserve, like going to places like Vancouver so they can live and work in the city. And Aunt Shirley was one of those people.
Well, Shirley really wanted to help her mom financially, but we also learned that she was like really wanted to get off the reserve because she was a free spirit.
Yeah, that's how Violet describes her. But she wanted like to see the world. She wanted experiences. She wanted to make her own money. She wanted to do all of this. And Vancouver was where she went to do it all.
I gotta tell you, we see a little bit of Vancouver in this episode. It looks like a fucking awesome city.
Yeah, it does.
Really cool.
Yeah.
But we also learned that Shirley, she was meticulous about staying in touch with her family. So she would send cards and letters to her mother all the time.
I'm pretty sure it was December of 79 that my grandmother didn't receive a Christmas card. March of 1980, she didn't receive her birthday card. And that's when she said, something's going on, something's wrong.
That's when Shirley's mom knew something was wrong.
Right. Now, that happens in 1980. By 1981, the family starts looking for Shirley. And the grandmother of this family, Violet, explains that this was almost like a directive. Like the grandmother was like, you go find her and promise to bring her home.
The other thing that Violet tells us is that, like, you know, the grandmother that was the one that was saying, go out and find her.
Yeah.
And the grandmother being the matriarch of the family, she says, when you make a promise to somebody like that in our community, you fulfill that promise.
Right. So there was a lot of extra pressure on Violet to sort of like do right by her grandmother as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we're back with Detective Steve, and this is where we learn that he became a detective in his youth, and he worked property crimes, and he moved into homicide, and this is where he tells us that, like, I retired for one afternoon, I was home drinking lemonade, they asked me if I wanted to come back and work cold cases, he says yes.
I enjoy a good problem. I enjoy solving the problem. I specifically enjoy looking out for our victims. They've been wronged. Someone needs to speak for them, and that's what I choose to do.
I love a good problem, but what I really extra love is solving that problem.
Yes, because there are those of us who are never going to retire. I think Steve is a worker. I think he wants to be busy all the time. I think he really does like believe he wants to do the things for the victims. And I do think if you're a certain kind of person and you work homicides, like I bet that he was the kind of homicide detective that got really close to the families.
Well, because he says like he loves problems, he loves solving them, but more than all of that, he says, and I mostly love being the person who looks out for the victims because the victims have been wronged. Someone needs to speak for them. And he says, and that's what I chose to do.
Yeah.
Now, I'm like, this is great, but he's in California. We were just with Violet 2,000 miles away.
Right.
30, 40 years later.
Yeah, this episode, I guess this is a good place to talk about it. It's shot very interestingly because we are going to start to watch the case get solved before Steve the detective does. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where it's like they were filming these like at the same time. Like they were filming Violet and her family and Steve and the investigation. And it was like we knew more information than Steve did at certain points. And I was like, wow. Like, I thought that was so interesting the way they filmed this.
Yeah, and we're going back in time. So remember, our first Jane Doe was found July 1980. Now, 3 days after the cops find the body of Jane Doe, Kern County number 5, they find another body, another woman. It's the middle of the afternoon, and this woman's body is in the parking lot of Westlake High School.
This body is found in Ventura County, which is about 2.5 hours from Kearns County, where our first Jane Doe was found 3 days before.
Right, and there are a lot of similarities here. No purse, no ID, nothing to identify her, and many, many stab wounds.
Yeah, and so like the investigators are saying like all they could do, again, it's 1980, there's no DNA, all they can really do for like evidence gathering is interview people who had been attending a football game nearby and like take meticulous pictures of the crime scene.
Yeah, and so this woman is known as Jane Doe Ventura. No fingerprints, nothing in the system. Like, again, no missing persons reports. It's the exact same thing as the other murder, which only happened 3 days ago.
Yeah, and this Jane Doe had been stabbed 13 times. She was 3 months pregnant, and she had also been raped.
Now back with Violet in Canada, and she says, you know, in 1981, they finally went to the cops, and here's why they didn't do so earlier.
We were just told, oh, probably just another dead Indian. It was just another dead Indian. That's what I was told. We were looked at as if we were nothing, you know. That's when I learned early on in our search that they were not going to help us.
They looked at me like I was nothing. They wouldn't help me. They didn't give a shit.
I can't make it we say this all the time, but like, officer, why did you go to work that day? Why did you decide to become a cop?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I want to say something. I want to point something out here. During this interview, Violet is holding an eagle feather. And I looked it up. And the eagle is a very, very powerful creature in many native cultures, but especially in Cree culture, which Violet is. And it's seen as a symbol of power and strength. And it is believed to have a direct connection to the creator or great spirit. The eagles are seen as messengers. So it's really, really important and powerful for Violet to be prominently holding this eagle feather while she's talking to the camera and telling the story about her journey. Because especially it struck me while she's saying, like, I had one conversation with the cops and I was like, oh, I'm on my own here. And then we get the shot of her really prominently holding this enormous feather. And I was like, what is the significance of that? And I thought it was really beautiful.
So Violet is saying, after this conversation with the cops, like, it's clear that it was going to be up to her to keep her promise to her grandmother. And she says, you know, that her and her Aunt Belle would go searching. She said, as long as we had money for gas, food, and lodging, we would set off. And they would drive, because remember, they thought that Aunt Shirley lived in Vancouver. So they would go searching in Vancouver. They would drive the 12 hours to Vancouver straight without sleeping.
Because the less time you spend in a motel, the more time you will be looking, right? First time, you know, there was that excitement of, oh, we'll find her. You know, we can do this. And after the first trip, you know, you start realizing, like, oh my goodness.
But it was really overwhelming because they're like, where do we start? Vancouver's big. Who do we talk to? It's a huge city. And they were always looking for other Indigenous people to speak to. And it was great for them, like when they found other Cree, because they could speak in their own language and ask more detailed questions. Because remember, a lot of people from Violet's home community were going to Vancouver.
It's so interesting, too, because we're with Violet in the car as she's describing like how she felt on that first trip, where she's like, we were in the car, we were so gung-ho, we're going to get there, we're going to find her. And then like you see the city of Vancouver, and you're like literally, you think about if it was your own kid, like where do you
park?
Right.
Like, where do you start?
You know the cops aren't going to help you. She's like, we wanted to look in every alley and down every, like, it's such an overwhelming task. Yeah. Because I guess they didn't know where Shirley had been working. They didn't know if she had any friends, where she was even living.
And her last known address was a year ago. Yeah. You know, so it was a huge task. On top of the fact that Violet just says again, like, we couldn't disappoint our grandmother.
Right.
Like, we couldn't let her down, and we disappointed. And she says we disappointed her so many times because they'd come back and after driving 12 hours, they're like, what'd you find? And Violet has to be the one to say
nothing. And then she would describe like the grandmother like going into her room and turning off the lights and just sitting in the dark. And she's like, I know she was crying.
Of course.
I mean, like, how lonely must that feel to be like, no, like the authorities aren't going to help us. We're doing this on our own. This old woman is like sitting in her room sobbing because nobody can. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah.
Girl, it's the most wonderful time of year. Holidays on the house at DraftKings Casino.
With this season's offerings, you'll unwrap everything on your list. Exclusive games, huge jackpots, and exciting rewards.
Fam, DraftKings is offering a warm welcome to new players with $100 instantly in casino credits with just a $10 wager.
Plus, everyone can get in on the action with a holiday reward every week.
So sign up with code TCO because the holiday cheer is here.
Yeah, only on DraftKings Casino.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org.
Please play responsibly. 21 plus. Physically present in Connecticut, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Ontario. Eligibility restrictions apply. New customers only. Opt-in required.
Casino credits are non-withdrawable and expire in 168 hours, to be exact. Terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos.
Very serious on that timeline.
Very serious. Not a minute before.
Not a minute before or after. Now, back with Detective Steve, he freaking loves DNA. Oh my God, does he love it? He loves it. And he says, like, if there's a cold case that has anything that can be tested for DNA, he's like, give me it. It's mine. It's mine.
Yeah.
But remember, in 1980, there was no DNA, but now there is.
Right. And he's saying to the camera people in the room, he's saying,
We're sitting here right now, we're dropping DNA all over the room. You leave, I can come in here and vacuum all this up now and identify you. For me, when I review a cold case, if there's anything that is remotely DNA, I'm going to take the case. You cannot dispute DNA evidence. You just can't.
I could vacuum it all up. I could tell you all your blood types. I could tell everything about you.
Don't fuck with me, fellas.
Don't fuck with me, fellas.
So we get that little, and I'm like, okay, there's DNA is going to be major in this case.
Yeah.
Because now we jump again. It's the early 2000s, and Violet is looking for her Aunt Shirley online. Because again, just like DNA, like this wasn't really a thing in the 80s.
Yeah.
So now we have like these two stories being told concurrently of Violet using stuff that like wasn't available in the 80s, and Detective Steve also using resources that weren't available in the 80s.
And Violet's also saying, like, unless you were a cop and you had access to their like law enforcement websites, there really wasn't much to go on. Like, you could look for obituaries, but like this was before Facebook. Remember, Facebook was like 2004. So at the beginning of her search, like once again, it's like going to the city of Vancouver and being like, I don't even know where to start. What do you do?
And she also has no access. Like, she's just like a civilian. Like, she doesn't have access to these case files.
Yeah.
And Violet explains, because we meet her daughter Justice.
What a great name.
I know. And of course, Violet.
Yeah.
It's just like so beautiful. But Violet explains like Indigenous people are often, quote, shoved over to the side.
Yes.
So in 2005, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't know if you guys remember this, he was the governor of California for a time. And he signs a bill that basically says,
Proposition 69, California, takes the mandatory collection of every convicted felon's DNA. There's over 1 million DNA kits in the California database. And in January of next year, they're going to take the DNA of everybody arrested for a felony. They solve 4 to 5 unsolved cases a day in California because of Governor Schwarzenegger's bill.
California, they say, are solving 4 to 5 cold cases a day because of this.
So if you're arrested for a felony, you have to give your DNA, and this DNA goes into this massive database.
Yeah.
So in 2012, a hit comes back for Detective Steve. Because remember, 2012, he was retired for a day, and now they're like, can you help us with this cold case from 1980? And he's like, hell yeah.
Yes.
Love a problem, love DNA. Like, I want to help victims. Let's do this.
Because remember, so with Ventura Jane Doe, they submitted her pants, her underwear, her fingernails, all for DNA profiling, and they uploaded to that national database. And now, because of what Schwarzenegger did in California, there's a hit.
So it's 2012, and there's a match to both crime scenes.
Yes, and it's the same guy.
Yeah, Jane Doe, Kern County number 5, and Jane Doe Ventura, and his name is Wilson Chuist. He's a piece of shit.
Yes.
But now Detective Steve is like, okay, now I'm working both of these cases at the same time because this piece of shit's DNA is on both of them. Like, okay.
And this guy, Chuist, he's currently in prison for being a serial rapist, and both of these victims had been raped. It's his DNA on both of their bodies.
Right. So Detective Steve gets Arnie Aviles from the sheriff's department, and they go talk to this piece of shit. And we don't know why he says this, but the guy walks in, and Detective Steve goes, hey, I'm Steve Rhodes, remember me?
Right.
And I'm like, what? And we don't get the backstory on how and when they've met or like what that case was, but he says, remember me?
He like, Chuist walks in, and Steve has to be like, how's it going? How
I
you
know.
doing?
They're like trying to build rapport.
Yeah.
And so they're showing him these photos of crimes that they know he didn't commit.
Yes.
Because they're doing this on purpose to get the conversation going.
They're letting him tell them that he didn't do it so they can show him that they believe him because they already know that he didn't do that.
They want him to think he's running the show.
Exactly.
So they start asking him about Jane Doe Ventura, and this guy won't even look at the photo. And he's like, did you say by Highway 101? Like, I don't even know where that is.
Yeah.
Now, we know that's a lie. And Detective Steve is over it then, and he's over it now.
Yeah.
Because he explains to us, let me tell you something about this piece of shit.
Wilson Chuist lived his entire adult life in the San Fernando Valley. You cannot go from one end of the San Fernando Valley to the other end without driving on the 101 freeway. You just can't. So that's a lie. I need to get the truth. Better, I need to get a lie. Prove the truth, but I can really prove a lie.
This is a lie. And he goes, you know what's even better than the truth? A lie.
Yes.
And you know what's even better than that? Another lie. Because
Yes.
a lie, I could say that's a lie. Can I prove that you were there? I don't know. But when I know you're full of shit, I could say you're lying, and here's why.
And the thing is, they can prove that he's... So Steve is now playing bad cop, and he's saying to the guy, he's like, we know you did this. We know you did this to her. We have your DNA. It's in both of these women. And he's like, not me, not my DNA. And I found this so enraging.
Yeah, like, yes, it is. Shut up.
Right. It's been a whole episode of them saying, like, you can't argue with DNA. And now this fucking guy's arguing with DNA. He's like, it's not mine. It's not mine. It's like...
You can try to argue, but you can't.
But you can't.
You can't. And so, but the point is, they're kind of like, at this point, they're like, we know that you did it. We're not trying to prove that. Who are they?
Yes.
Because now
where did you find them? How did they get here? Their family's looking for them in fucking Vancouver.
Right. We're here for the victims, and their stories.
Yes.
So like, we just want to know what happened. We know you did it. That's not our issue here.
Yeah.
We know that for a fact. What did you do? Who are they?
But
because we have work to do.
he just flat refuses to acknowledge having anything to do with it. And so, like, I just made the note. So a few days later, Steve says, I went down to the jail and arrested him for both murders.
Yeah, he's already in custody and he's arrested again.
Yeah.
So there's a press conference, though, and now they have composites of both Jane Does and they're on the news. Now, to be clear, this is all happening in 2012, but the murders took place in 1980.
Yes.
So now we're back with Violet and her daughter Justice, and they're telling us about these fucking residential schools, which Connie Walker talked a lot about in her episode of Let the Women.
Yes.
They're horrifying.
Violet is saying
The residential school was to take the Indian out of the child. And it started in the late 1800s, right up to 1996. So that's like a whole century of removing children from the traditional homes. And so there was a great disconnect.
Try to make them as white as possible and strip them of their language and everything else and be incredibly abusive in every sense of the word.
And this lasted until 1996.
Yeah.
Like from the late 1800s to 1996. And Violet says that's a whole century of removing children from their homes and removing them from their culture.
Yeah. And so like there's a sexual abuse and psychological abuse and physical abuse. And then a lot of people who went to these schools would then turn to drugs and or alcohol
Yeah.
to sort of cope with what happened. Now, all of this, the abuse in the schools, what happened afterwards, has generational effects because we're
Yeah.
here with Violet and we're here with her daughter Justice. And Violet's like, my mom went to one of those schools.
Yeah.
And because of her trauma, her mother wasn't really affectionate with her and her mom was dealing with PTSD, but not dealing with it. She just
Yes.
had it. And so no one, of course this affects Violet. And then Violet went to a residential school and she says, thankfully, her father sent her to live with her grandparents because it took her 2 years to relearn her own culture.
She says it was like a form of cultural immersion to be sent to live with her grandparents.
Yeah, and so like we talked about this, I talked about this a lot with Connie Walker, but a major part of it is the language.
Yes.
Like also if you watch, it's a phenomenal show that was on FX, Reservation Dogs. It's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
But they talk about it a lot there about it's the language. Like
Yeah.
these people's language are gone. Like there are people who are like born there full-blood Cree who can't speak Cree.
Yeah.
Because of what happened
Well,
here.
right,
It's
because
crazy.
I mean, 100 years is what, 4 generations,
It's
5
insane.
generations of like, yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
And so Violet's saying, like, I still have a lot of PTSD. We all do. So Violet takes her culture and her history very seriously. And so she passes it down to her daughter, Justice.
I was going to say, even Justice, who I don't believe went to a residential school, but she deals with her mother's PTSD from the whole thing. And she's saying that it's affected the way that she parents her own children. And she says that just as her daughter, Lily, walks into the kitchen. And I was like, oh my God, this kid is so cute.
And Justice is like, we can't not talk about she calls it intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
And she says,
you carry that forever. And until you become a parent and until you become, aware of how those things have impacted you, is when you have the power to change that.
but it's still there. It's like in the air. It's all around us.
But it's all connected to the reason why the cops don't take these disappearances seriously, because they don't want these people to exist.
Right.
You know what I mean? They live in a culture that tried to eradicate this culture for 100 years.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know about residential schools, I mean, like major trigger warning for everything, but look it up. It will blow your mind. And the fact that it was happening through 1996 is wild.
And the kids were forcibly removed from their homes.
They were either taken from their homes or they were like ads in the magazines too about they would be adopted into white families because like if you're indigenous, you're not like capable enough.
Oh
so
my
they would
God.
literally strip them from their families, either putting them in the residential schools or as like a government mandate or whatever to like, oh, you definitely can't handle your own kids. So we'll just like send them to a white family, and the white family could like pick out of the magazine or the newspaper like which one they wanted.
Oh my God.
Back to Ventura County in California. This piece of shit rapist has been arrested and murder. He's been arrested for the murder of both Jane Does.
Yeah, so Steve is ready to take it to the DA because Steve wants to prosecute the son of a bitch.
This is great because we get DA John and Detective Steve tell two versions of the same story.
Yeah.
So the minute DA John hears the DNA evidence, he stops taking notes because he's like, oh, we have this guy. He goes,
when you do jury trials, and I've done quite a few, there's two types of evidence that jurors just love: surveillance video and DNA. And for me, if you have either one, you take a shot.
DA John hears DNA evidence and he's like, oh, I'm absolutely taking this case.
I've never heard surveillance video put in the same category as DNA, but I love it. I love it.
In terms of what juries love,
Totally.
that I get.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of the table, Steve's like, oh, shit, he stopped taking notes. And I'm like, no, Steve, this is good. You both love DNA.
Yeah.
You hold DNA in your hearts the same way. Like, this is a good thing. But imagine you're Detective Steve and you're like, oh, he stopped caring.
Why is nobody doing anything to educate juries that it doesn't have to be DNA? Because I feel like the more that we say, like, oh, there's DNA, yay, the more we're reinforcing that you need that or else the guy's going to walk free.
Yeah, I mean...
You know?
Yeah, there's a lot there. It's all, I mean, it literally feels like a case-by-case basis.
I know.
If we have 50 pieces of circumstantial evidence, I don't really care that much about DNA so much anymore. But I love it. If we got it, I love it.
Oh, God.
Travel down the road and back again.
Girls, Simply Safe is back. Look, if you've ever felt unsafe in your home, now is the time to act because Simply Safe is extending its massive Black Friday deal for our listeners. Get 50% off a new Simply Safe security system.
Yeah, you get 50% off today just by visiting simplysafe.com/TCO. Best prices of the year.
Fam, Simply Safe is a new way to protect your home that stops intruders before they break into your home. Wait until you hear how they do this.
Yeah, old school systems would only take action once someone is already inside your home, which I don't know, too little, too late. What have you done for me lately?
Totally. Simply Safe's Active Guard outdoor protection changes the game by preventing crime before it happens. Girl, tell them how they do it.
Oh my God. There are agents, everyone. Listen to this. Agents are like watching your house in real time, and if needed, they'll like talk to people directly or set off spotlights.
It's a Hollywood production up here with Simply Safe, fam. They are keeping the bad guys out of your house. Plus, there's no long-term contracts, no cancellation fees, and it's around $1 a day for all this protection.
Yep, all that. So
get out of here!
Simply Safe is extending its massive Black Friday deal for our listeners. This week only, you can get 50% off any new system with a select professional monitoring plan.
This is your last chance to claim their best offer of the year. Head to simplysafe.com/TCO.
That's simplysafe.com/TCO.
There's no safe like Simply Safe, and there's no sass like the Simply Safe agent screaming at that guy to get off your lawn.
Yeah,
I love you, Simply
Safe.
Safe.
My lawn. Abe Simpson over here.
Girl, Our Place is back. I hear you've been using the air fryer.
Yeah, it's like this air fryer toaster thing that does absolutely everything.
Yes.
It is so sleek and clean looking. And let me tell you, I'm a big leftovers person too.
Yeah, cold pots, we know all about it.
Right? No, but if you're getting, I don't know, like an onion ring or a mozzarella stick.
Sure, things that should be crispy.
Yes. But also gooey on the inside, talking about those mazzers.
It's like me.
Exactly. Our Place, that air fryer does the trick.
I gotta tell you, we've been cooking with the pots and pans. And fam, did you know that most cookware and appliances are made with forever chemicals, but not with Our Place, fam? They are a mission-driven and female-founded brand that makes beautiful kitchen products that are healthy and sustainable.
And they know the importance of a leftover mozzarella stick.
But I mean, like, who doesn't?
I mean,
you know what I mean?
These ladies have my heart.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You know those forever chemicals I was talking about?
Gross. You mean PFAS and Teflon?
Yeah.
Hate them.
Can you get rid of them? Because I know that Our Place can.
Yeah, Our Place totally can. That's why we're sticking them. We're going to their place.
Exactly.
Our Place.
They've always been PFAS-free, and they offer the most durable, toxic-free ceramic coatings, ensuring a healthy, safe cooking experience. I'm not much for cooking, but I have been lately, and I gotta tell you, it's a great experience.
And I don't know if this means anything to you, but, you know, Our Place is in everyone's kitchen from Selena Gomez, who I love, and David Beckham, if you're into the sports thing.
Oh, well, I'm into David Beckham for other reasons
great.
than sports.
Posh Spice's husband.
Did you call her Hot Spice?
I called Victoria Beckham Posh Spice.
I thought you called her Hot Spice, which also works.
They're all hotties.
That's true.
Bring back the Spice Girls.
So, fam, upgrade to Our Place today and say goodbye to forever chemicals in your kitchen. Who needs it?
Go to FromOurPlace.com and enter our code TCO at checkout to receive 10% off site-wide.
That's FromOurPlace.com, code TCO.
Our Place offers a 100-day trial with free shipping and returns.
I hear Hot Spice will even bring it away for you if you want her to take it away.
Well, I don't know if I'll go that far, but
maybe
hey-o.
Hey-o.
I just call myself Hot Spice. May 9th, 2018. Remember, these murders happened in 1980.
Yeah.
The trial starts. It takes about a month.
Yeah, I love that we get none of the trial, really, because all we really get is the judge sentencing this bastard.
Because everything goes according to plan. We have the DNA. We have, his semen.
Yeah.
It's all over all the pieces of evidence. It's over the women. So, it's still very stressful, though, because DA John has to convince 12 people.
Yeah.
You never know how this is going to go. Stranger things have happened. They're prosecuting both cases, and it's it's wild, like you were saying, like it's just a DNA case.
Right. And it is straightforward, but I love that we hear what the judge says to the killer.
It's amazing.
And while I take no personal pleasure ever in sentencing a criminal defendant, I will tell you I'm taking a tremendous amount of professional satisfaction in telling you there will never be a parole board. Your last breath is going to be taken in state prison, right where you deserve to be, and it's going to be on my order.
I take great personal satisfaction in knowing that you'll never be in front of a parole board. Your last breath is going to be taken in state prison, which is where you deserve to be, and it's going to be on my order.
That guy sleeps pretty well at night, I think. But
he's Angela, a glass of warm milk, 2 chapters of my favorite book, and lights out by 9.
Yeah.
That's how I sleep at night.
When she's like cheating all over the office. But another reason this was so difficult is because they hadn't identified the victims yet.
Yeah.
So DA John was a little worried that like there's no family in the courtroom. They're known as Jane Doe Kern County number 5 and Jane Doe Ventura County. And DA John is like, he was worried that the jury might feel disconnected.
Yeah.
But the fucking opposite happened.
And the jurors are here to tell us, like one of these jurors is like, the fact that these women were unidentified meant that we had to be their family. We had to be their voices. We had to be the ones to stand up for them.
And like, I wasn't expecting that, and it made me feel really emotional because I'll take any win I can get in terms of humanity these days. And it was really nice to hear because it was so shitty. I'm sure DA John has run into that before.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have we heard, like, well, the rape victim didn't want to testify, so how are we supposed to humanize her?
Exactly.
Like, she's a
the
fucking
rape
human.
victim that he killed isn't here to testify,
Like,
so he can't face his accuser in court. I know.
How many times have we heard that? So
It's
to
true.
hear this jury be like, no, we are their advocates now, really made me emotional.
And also, like, Detective Steve in the end says the only regret he has is that he couldn't call up somebody's mother and father and say, I got justice for your daughter.
Because while the trial is over, the case isn't.
Yeah.
Because we still have to, like, figure out who these women are. And Detective Steve says we need to send them home.
And that's amazing that, like, they got their win, but they still cared about the part that they say that they care about.
Right. I mean, a lot of people would have been like, oh, like, tick that box and move on to my next case.
Exactly.
But Detective Steve isn't doing that.
No.
So
Which is amazing, too, that, like, his department gives him the room to continue to sort of figure out the rest of it.
I wonder, I don't know why, but I wonder if that's because, like, he retired and then they asked him to come back. And he's like, if I'm doing this, I'm doing it my way. Like, maybe he's in a different kind of task
maybe
force.
it's all part of it. Like, wouldn't it be weird if they actually all care about all of this?
What?
You know what I mean?
Well, let's not go that far.
I know.
A girl can dream. So now we're back with Violet in, like, present day. And she's at a march for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Because as we know, unfortunately, Aunt Shirley is not the only woman this happened to.
It's almost a weekly thing where our people are missing, our children are missing. We need people to care. We need people to be made aware that this is actually still happening.
We are doing these marches really for everyone else. She's like, we know this is part of our culture.
Yeah.
And we need people to care and we need people to be made aware that this is happening.
I mean, Justice, who's Violet's daughter, is saying that her own daughter is 6 and they're already talking about this. That, like, her daughter needs to understand, like, how safe and protective of her own self she needs to be.
Because the cops won't do it.
Because no one's going to help her.
Like, everyone has to have their own backs or each other's backs in the community.
God.
And there are people speaking about their friends and family members who've gone missing.
Yeah. So now we go to Tennessee to meet Gina Rather.
Yeah, she's a volunteer with the DNA Jane Doe Project, which whenever I see a volunteer like this, I'm like, all right, dazzle me, Gina, and boy, does she.
Well, she tells us about the DNA Doe Project. She said it was founded in 2017. It's a nonprofit organization working with law enforcement agencies to identify John and Jane Does through DNA and genetic genealogy.
I mean, we love this shit, right?
I mean, she's saying the founders of this organization realized that the same methods used to identify birth parents for adoptees could be used to identify John and Jane Does. Like, the fact that we are able to use genetic genealogy in this way is magical.
And it's like, I feel like we're just at the beginning here. How many cases have we had? You know, like Shayna from I Just Killed My Dad and like all of these other things. I know there are a million cases, but it's just like we're kind of just at the beginning of all of this.
Yeah.
And she says because they're all volunteers and passionate and they love it, she goes, we don't give up on any cases. It can take 10 hours, 10,000. It doesn't matter.
I wanted to know more more about her life. I'm like, girl, do you have another job? Like, how can you afford to just give 10,000 hours to something like this?
I don't know.
You know?
Maybe that means it just takes months and months and months. She'd get like an hour that she can do it.
But these like DNA warriors, because even when they explain to me how it works, I still can't follow it.
We've done it like a million times, and I'm
know.
like, and then they get the guy.
Exactly.
But Violet, our friend Violet,
I became a crime junkie just watching all these programs, listening to podcasts. I watched them identify the Golden State Killer.
she watched in real time, like that very famous news broadcast of when the DNA helped catch the Golden State Killer in 2018. She was watching it.
I mean, what's amazing, we're going to learn, is that Steve, our detective, he was on the genetic genealogy task force for that case.
I couldn't believe it.
I think that case was a real game changer for everybody. I think that, like, on the law enforcement side, on the people who are just care about this stuff side, we realized, like, we all knew about the Golden State Killer, you know what I mean? And, like, for 40 years or whatever, and they were able to solve it, like, one Tuesday afternoon.
And it's another instance of Detective Steve and Violet having a similar realization at the same time in their journey. Like, because Detective Steve was like, oh, DNA, that wasn't in the 80s, I'll use that. And Violet before was like, oh, the internet, that wasn't in the 80s, I'll use that. So now they see the Golden State Killer happen in real time, and Violet's sitting at home going, oh my God, that's the thing that's going to help me find my Aunt Shirley. And Detective Steve is on the case being like, oh my God, this is going to help me with so many other cases.
He's a person whose picture I never need to see again. You know what I mean?
God, the worst. Not Detective Steve, the other piece of shit. The other one. I'm not even going to say it.
Yeah.
So now Detective Steve is taking everything he's learned and he's applying it because he's like, look at what the science can do to all these cases. And now we're going to talk about these two Jane Doe cases specifically.
Right, because remember, they're able to get DNA from the women from the evidence from the crime scene. It takes a lot. It's really degraded, but they're able to do it, and they're able to, like, establish DNA profiles for both of these Jane Does.
Dawn is like, well, we don't have DNA from the victims just yet. So she wants to go back. Because remember, in the 80s, they weren't taking it. Like, they just didn't know what to take.
Yeah.
So she's trying to see if there's anything she can use from the crime scene, like the clothes they were wearing, to try to see, like, what's going on from 1980 to now. It's going to be rough, but we're going to try it.
And they do it.
They do it.
It works.
And Gina from the Doe Project volunteered for this case. So, like, this is how now everyone we've met is coming together.
It's so funny because Gina says,
when we originally uploaded her, I think we had 19 visible matches, which is minuscule.
Gina says there were 19 visible matches. I was like, yes, 19. Oh my God, so many.
She's there to take the wind out of your sails.
I know.
She goes, which is minuscule.
Minuscule. This is where you start to lose me with the science, but
that's a good thing. Minuscule is a good thing here.
Oh, it is.
Because she says because of this, they were able to pinpoint her ethnicity right away.
Oh.
So because it was a small pool, she was kind of
good.
like,
oh, great. So the winds are back in my sails.
We're back.
Okay,
windy day. But because of the information, she knows that her Jane Doe is indigenous. So she immediately goes to the indigenous Facebook groups.
Yeah, which is such a smart idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, then now we just take a quick detour to Detective Steve and his wife, Mickey.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with Mickey.
They have mugs that say everybody counts.
I know.
Is Mickey Rhodes not the coolest name ever?
Totally.
It's like she's in that band Heart.
What? How do I get your love?
Mickey Rhodes?
I know. Mickey, you're right. That's a definite rock star name.
It's a cool ass name.
And honestly, take one look at Mickey. Like, she probably kills that song at karaoke.
Of course.
You know?
Drinking out of their Everybody Counts mugs.
I know.
But she's here to be like, look, in case you didn't know from the first 40 minutes of this documentary, Detective Steve is dedicated. He misses birthdays. He misses holidays. His phone is ringing off the hook. He answers it every time.
Yeah.
And they're like, he can't balance a checkbook, but he can solve a cold case. And I'm like, good news, everyone. Everything's digital. You don't have to, don't worry. Don't waste your time learning about how to balance a checkbook. Keep doing what you're doing, Steve.
I love that one day that Steve was retired and he was like sitting around the house annoying Mickey to pieces.
Bored.
So that when they called, they're like, do you want to come back and do cold cases?
Yes.
Mickey said yes before he could even answer.
Yes.
Get out of here, Steve.
Go
back to work.
To do amazing work.
I know.
And then sit and talk about it out of their, and while they sip out of their Everybody
It's
Counts
true.
mugs.
They look like they've been married for 80 years.
They're both catches. It's great.
Totally.
Which is rare.
It's true.
So they're great.
Yeah.
Travel down the road back again.
Girl, Home Chef is back. This is like our favorite meal kit delivered right to our house.
I love a meal kit, and I love a meal kit during the super busy time of year because it helps solve a lot of problems and it answers a lot of questions.
Can I tell you this too? Like, there's lots of different meals types that you can pick from, and we picked the high protein, like low carb ones, which you never want in the moment, but you're always glad that like Healthy You picked it a week ago, and it's in the fridge ready to be made.
Yeah, so they deliver fresh ingredients and chef-designed recipes. They deliver them conveniently to your doorstep to simplify your cooking experience.
Yeah. Also, users of leading meal kits have rated Home Chef #1 in quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease.
So let me just go into some of the variety here.
Please.
So
Take it away.
if you want like classic meal kits with pre-portioned ingredients, they have those. Quick 30-minute recipes, they have those too. Oven-ready options, which is perfect, again, for this time of year. Oh, whoa, we have to go to that thing. What are we going to do? Throw it in the oven. They also have microwave meals. They have a family menu. They have like everything. Hassle-free, delicious food delivered to your door. Are you kidding?
It's incredible. Home Chef has over 30 options a week and serves a variety of dietary needs, girl.
Yeah, customers are saving an average of like $86 a month on groceries.
I mean, I'm just thinking about it now. Like when you go to make dinner, just like in like a one meal, how much you overbuy just to make that one meal.
And also, I have to tell you, I'm not making a joke. Like saving all that time deciding is priceless.
Oh my God.
And that is priceless.
100%. So fam, for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 18 free meals plus free dessert for life, which is really good. And of course, free shipping on your first box.
Go to homechef.com/TCO.
That's homechef.com/TCO for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. They're not kidding about that.
No, homechef.com/TCO. Must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert.
And you're going to want to be.
No funny stuff.
No funny stuff.
Now, September 2019, remember, Detective Steve came on this case in 2012. These cases are from 1980, and now we're at 2019.
Yeah.
There's a breakthrough moment. There's a match on the Jane Doe, Kern County #5.
She was within the second cousin range. And of her great-grandparents, only one great-grandparent was Indigenous. And so we said, we're on the right track here. Once we identified the great-grandfather, we knew he lived his entire life in the Massachusetts area.
Of her great-grandparents, only one was Indigenous.
So they identify the great-grandfather.
Yeah.
He lived his whole life in Musquecheese, which is exactly where we started with Violet. And I'm like, oh my God, it's all coming together.
Well, and not only that, his children and his grandchildren all lived in the same place their entire lives as well.
Right.
So Gina's like, if we go there, somebody is going to know who this Jane Doe is.
And she's excited, but she's cautious because then this hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
She says, to date, there hasn't been a single Indigenous identification because they are so underrepresented in the databases.
It's unbelievable.
And she says they've just had their history erased in so many ways.
Yeah.
So February 2020, 30 years after the murders, the Jane Doe Network posts on Facebook again.
Yeah.
And this time, the post makes its way to Violet. A friend of hers sends it to her.
Because what happened was Gina was like really getting nervous. Remember how she said we never give up? She's kind of like, I don't know that we're going to solve this one because like you were saying, she's like an Indigenous person and they're underrepresented. We are having a really hard time reaching the community.
Yeah.
So but she'd been in the Facebook groups already. She gives it one last push.
And she posts a photo of the composite based on...
And she's like, show this to everybody you know.
And they did, and everyone showed it to everyone, and now we're at Violet.
My friend, she said, go on Facebook. They found a woman who is from Musquecheese. And so I went into Facebook and I logged on and I'm like, that's her. This is her.
This is Aunt Shirley.
And we get this amazing moment where Violet was like, okay, this looks really good. The more I learned, the more I was like, this is probably it, but we gotta upload Violet's DNA to GEDmatch because Violet had uploaded her DNA to Ancestry.com only, but not to GEDmatch, which is like a much larger pool. So Gina is walking her through the steps of uploading her DNA, and like as it comes through and it's a hit, they both burst into tears.
Yeah, because Gina does her thing on her end.
Yeah.
She does the magic.
Well, because it's like Gina's talking to me, okay, Patrick, you need to like click this box and drag
upload.
this thing. The upload is the circle with the little blue button. You got to press that. They're like virtually holding each other's hands.
It's so sweet.
They're like, this is going to be it.
And then it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. And so Jane Doe, Kern County #5 is Violet's Aunt Shirley. Her name is Shirley Soosay.
Yeah.
And it's so emotional for Violet, for Gina, for us, for everybody.
Gina says it was her most emotional moment ever working with this project. And Violet was like, I probably didn't even sound human to her over the phone.
Sure, yeah.
Because it's like Gina's describing the sound that Violet made. Violet is describing the sound that Violet made.
Because it's relief, but it's also grief. And it's also just all of these years and decades. And like Violet just keeps saying, like, I kept my promise. I found you. I kept my promise.
And Violet says this really interesting thing. She's like, I don't remember if I screamed, if I cried, if I laughed. It's like funny how any one of those emotions makes sense in that moment.
It's just a release of any kind. So by April 24th, 2021, Shirley Soosay's story is on the news. Like her name, her face, her story. It's not stripped away from her anymore. And so Detective Steve reaches out to Violet to be like, hey, so you know, like, I know it felt really lonely, but like starting from 2012, I was right there with you.
And Violet, like, that means so much. So she says that Steve has like a place in their family because Violet's like,
You know, thinking I was doing this by myself. Little did I know there were others who were doing the same thing, and we just had to meet. They were trying to find her identity. I was trying to find my auntie. Knowing that I really wasn't alone, that's so comforting.
all these other people all over the country, all over a separate country, working to sort of identify her as well.
Like everyone was doing the same thing for the same reason, kind of independently. And then they all got together and Violet thought she was by herself with her daughter Justice. And like now we're all here.
And it's like, I would imagine when you work in those jobs, whether you're Violet looking for your lost loved one or you're Gina or you're Dawn or you're, this is the day you live for. On the really hard days, you remember this day.
Yeah.
You know?
Because Violet says it's so comforting. People do care. And she says, my free-spirited auntie is coming home.
Yeah.
Which is just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But things take forever because it's like the year. I'm like, we're 2020, 2021,
I know.
May 27, 2020.
The only thing that went fast was the trial for that piece of shit.
I mean, I'll take a win where I can get it. No one was hemming and hawing about that asshole. Great. We'll take it. So, but it's March 27, 2022, and Shirley Soosay's remains were brought home. There was a funeral. It's 40 years in the making.
Yeah.
And these bikers from Musquecheese escorted Shirley the rest of the way home.
Yeah.
So then we get some on-screen text, and I have some updates.
Oh.
So Jane Doe, Ventura County, remains unidentified.
Yeah.
And it says Steve Rhodes continues to search for her family. So I want to put the link in the show notes because I think we can really help.
Yeah.
But the DNA Doe Project, in 2023, they posted a really detailed update about what they found in their DNA search. So they have descendants and ancestral lines. They have names. They have relatives. They have a lot of defining characteristics like piercings and scars.
Oh.
They have it all laid out on the website. They're asking for the public's help. They were able, this is crazy, they were able to identify the father of Jane Doe's unborn baby.
Oh my God.
He was found and interviewed, but had no information that is helpful, which like, there are also no details on why there were no details. It could have been for 1 million reasons.
Of course.
So we really don't have, like, for all of the information they found and to have it laid out that way and to be able to speak to someone who knew her, like we still don't know anything.
Wow.
Especially after 40 years, like human memory is a wild thing. So we'll put that link in the show notes. Maybe something will trigger a memory for you, or I don't know. And to see their work like that is really crazy, all laid out with their timeline and their like map and everything. It's really, really nuts.
Wow.
So,
I mean, great work, everybody. Like,
I mean, my
holy
God.
shit.
Yeah. Really crazy.
Oh my God, girl, we did Web of Death episode 4.
Yeah, California Dreaming.
Are we going to do more of these?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is our last bonus up of the year, but for sure, we're going to do the rest of the series. I think there are 2 or 3 more episodes, but they are on the list for our next bonus episodes. It's a really great series.
I mean, this is our last bonus episode of the year. That means nothing to you, dear listener. The episodes are just going to keep on coming.
Our recording schedule doesn't change. We still record
90
4
a week.
episodes twice a week. So we got your back. Just, you know.
Don't worry. Fam, just remember, if you are on the Patreon or you want to join the Patreon to come hang out with us at Drag Bingo, it's next Wednesday, December 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern. If you do join the Patreon, that's where you're going to get over 400 full ad-free bonus episodes the second you join. Right now, we're doing that. This is the Zodiac speaking from Netflix.
Yeah, so here's what's coming up. Today is Thursday. So tomorrow, Friday, is the last episode of This is the Zodiac speaking, episode 3. Then we're doing Anatomy of Lies right after that.
I didn't think I was going to like it. I watched it. I was like these out of their mind lesbians.
I mean,
I know.
At least one of them.
Well, only one, really, but like, it's wild.
It's crazy. And then so Tuesday on the regular feed, The Girl on the Milk Carton. That's the 2-parter on Peacock, but we did in 1 episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, lots going on. Lots coming up. We love you. Stay tuned. What are we going to give them the trailer for? The Girl on the Milk Carton?
Yeah, I think so, because that's the next one on the regular feed.
Okay.
I think that's what we've been doing.
All right. Well, stay tuned for for the trailer for that, fam. And
All right.
we love you. We'll see you at Track Bingo.
We love you. See you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Jonelle Matthews of Greeley, Colorado, who 5 days before Christmas disappeared from her home.
Greeley was a sleepy little town until December 1984.
No forced entry, no signs of struggle. She's vanished.
It's believed she's the victim of a kidnapping.
She was one of the first ones on the milk carton.
Someone in Greeley knew something.
A monster tapped on the shoulder of law enforcement because he couldn't help but to do it.
Statements made by Pinky made him a person of interest.
The former candidate for governor of Idaho.
He's an enigma. Is he a criminal? Is he a witness? Who is he?
I didn't know she existed until 6 days after the fact.
I never let myself fear failure. Failure wasn't an option.
It was like a quest for me. I had to find out if he killed Jonelle Matthews.
You couldn't even believe something like that would happen. It affected people for decades. It still does.